Hey folks, I'm sitting here today in the L9000 Ford. It's got a big cam 350 Cummins in it. And let's see if you can tell me what transmission it's got in it. I know some of you can, but for those of you that can't, let's talk about it. I want to start and tell you the different transmissions that come in most of these trucks are different, but a lot the same, with just different parts and pieces added to them to make them different. And this video is going to be mainly for your Eaton Fuller, Meritor, Rockwell transmissions, Road Ranger, that stuff. I'm not going to get into the Mack transmissions because that's a whole different ball game. Mack is Mack. Mack builds their own transmissions, and although I'm not saying they're a bad transmission, I don't know a whole lot about Macks. Drove a few of them, but I haven't went down the rabbit hole to know a lot about Mack, so I don't want to steer you wrong. So let's start with this 9-speed. Okay. Here's the pattern for a 9-speed transmission. And the way that works is you start with low, 1, 2, 3, 4. Shift your range selector up to high. And go 6, 7, or what am I talking about? 5, 6, 7, 8. And if you count low, that makes 9. So that makes your 9 gears. And a lot of you guys are saying, well, there's another gear there. It's actually 10 gears, because I can go into low. I can go into, I can go into low on the, it gets hard to say this, go into low on the high side. So I can go through, low, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can come back to low in the high side like it's a 10-speed. The issue with that is that this gear, if you go with low on the high side, it's about the same speed as fourth on the low side. So that's why they don't call it a 10-speed, because there's really no sense in having two gears the same speed. It is, and I don't know if you're supposed to do this, I've seen it done for years, but if you're pulling a hill and you're in the high side and you get down to first in the high side and you don't want to do that height or low range shift, I have seen a lot of people, and I've done it myself, to go in low on the high side, and that you're essentially the same as fourth on the low side. I don't know if these transmissions, if you're supposed to do that, but it happens all the time. But when you're talking about 9 speeds, there's different variants in 9 speeds. This is the standard 9-speed, which you're going to see 99% of the time. That's where it does this. There's also the 9-speed that people have turned into an overdrive, where they've swapped the 8th position and the 7th position. You'll see here, I'll get this back. The two right sides have been swapped. And now, instead of being in a, I guess we can call it an N pattern, now we shift 1, 2, 3, 4 and go in a U pattern. And the reason they do that is when they swap those gears on the outside here, it changes the ratio in the transmission. So if you have a concrete truck with a 9-speed and it's low geared, and now you decide you want to make it run a little faster down the road, you can actually take and overdrive it by going in the transmission, swapping these gears, and it makes for a faster output. Drove several trucks like that and that gets kind of messy when you forget it's a U-shaped pattern. When you go from first to second to fourth. Then we have another 9-speed that I have never drove, I've never seen, but I was doing a little bit of research to make sure I didn't tell you all lies before this, to refresh myself on some of this. I came up with this 9-speed. They call it performance 9-speed. And that's where you don't use that in the low range. And I don't know anything about this transmission, but I'm going to paint a kind of a wide paintbrush today, because there's some things I don't know, but I can tell you what I do know. And 'cause there's so many different transmissions for these trucks, especially if you go back 40 years and or farther back than that. You've got two sticks, you've got uh, like I said, the Mack triplex, and there's just a bunch of different stuff. So I'm painting kind of a wide brush on all this stuff, but most of the ones you're going to see as far as 9 speeds are going to be this standard 9 speed. And you might think I'm crazy, but most of the transmissions are built off of this. I call it a 9-speed family transmission and a 10-speed family transmission, and let me tell you why. So as you see, they took a 5-speed transmission here and they made it a 9-speed by putting a range selector on it. So you have a 5-speed transmission with a 2-speed transmission on it, and that's how you get 9 speeds. So instead of, maybe you think that the transmission would have 9 gears in it. That's not really the case. It has 5 gears and 4 of them get used twice, and that's how you come up with a 9. Now let me show you something interesting. Let's take this 9-speed, see if you can tell and put it next to this. I'm doing this in a truck, and I'm trying not to edit, so bear with me. And I wish I had a little bit better desk here. 3 hands. Maybe I can put it up here. Okay, so we still have let me zoom out. The 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 low. And we have the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are all in the same position. But if you'll notice, on the white, which is the high side, we have a high-low, a high-low, and a high-low, and a high-low. So all a 13 speed, there's a 13. All a 13 speed is a 9 speed with a splitter box on it. And we only split the high side. If I'm in the low side, that splitter will not move forward. It's locked out. If I'm in the high side, it'll go right in. So that's how they've got 13 gears. They take a 9 speed and they split the top 4 gears, the high side, and that's how we have 13 gears. So you're saying, okay, I see how that's in the same family. Let's add another one to it. Oh, the wonderful 18 speed. You see the difference? Now they've unlocked it. I don't know if they've done anything different in the transmission, but they've unlocked it where we can split the high and we can split the low. So what is 9 times 2? 18. We can split all the gears in an 18 speed. And that is why, that's the deal. That's how we get that. That's how those numbers work. So this transmission is a 9 with some add-ons. This transmission is a 9 with some add-ons. Now let's go to your 10 speed. We're done with 9s. We're done with the 9-speed family transmissions. Oh, papers, just get Ford 9000 didn't have much of a dashboard. Let's go with your 10-speed transmission. Well, what's different about that than 9-speed? It essentially looks the same. It's the same six holes and same kind of pattern in a way. The difference between a 10-speed and a 9-speed is that this range right here, well, this isn't the highest quality video, but we'll work through it. This range right here, remember me telling you about the 9-speed that you wouldn't necessarily progressive shift and go back into this hole right here in high range because it didn't make sense because you were already at that range in 4th low. A 10-speed has a different spread on the gears, so you would. So when you shift this transmission, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, shift to high, and start over again. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's how they get 10. Because in the high side, this 6th gear, it is actually a different ratio. So the 10 speed, let's talk about what they've built off of with the 10 speed. All right. Now, it's going to be hard to show you in the paperwork because it doesn't have the little splitter gears. And this pattern, as you see, looks identical to a 10 speed. And the reason that is because a 15 speed, the main transmission part, is identical to a 10 speed. But let's look at what that says. Deep reduction. The button over here is a deep reduction. Where, let's look. Oh man, got papers everywhere. Let's look at what that says. That does not say deep reduction. That says splitter. Where when you're running a splitter, but going back to the 9 family, so it's a situation when you're running a splitter transmission, you'll start here in low. Let's just call it 2nd gear. It doesn't matter on 18 speed. So you're in 2nd gear, low. You split that gear. Instead of shifting a whole gear, you split that gear, and that's half of a gear. So it's halfway in between here. Oh, come on, truck, shift. And here. It's halfway between 2nd and 3rd. So we're 2, 2.5. And then when we shift a splitter, we take it out, pre-select it, 3, 3.5, back 4, 4.5. Okay, so I just want to step back on that a little bit. But the reason that a 15 is an oddball transmission and it's different compared to these rest of them is that is not a splitter. That is a deep reduction. So when you put it in, it gives you deep reduction gears. It gives you, instead of a 1, you have a low 1, and a low 2, and a low 3, and a low 4. And without taking too much of your time, there's a lot of videos on 15 speeds. But essentially, the way that they've got it, there's some overlap. So if you're shifting a 15 speed and you're down, you got a concrete truck, a dump truck, you're out in a field somewhere and you need some low gearing, you can shift it into deep reduction, low 1st, low 2nd. You can shift through all them gears without moving this, just normal. Shift through all those gears. And then when you take it out of deep reduction, you go back 1 gear. And all these trucks are going to shift different depending on how the throttle's set, but it's generally, so I could be over here in deep reduction and come out and go back 1 gear. That's just generally the rule of thumb on a 15. When you come out of deep, you're in deep, you come out, you go back 1 gear. And then after you're out of deep reduction, it's a 10 speed. That's what you do. You shift it like a 10 speed after you come out of deep. And you don't have to use it. You don't have to use this button on any of them. You don't have to, that's there for you. The reason that it's there on a 13 speed, I know this is 18, but bear with me. On a 13 speed, you can split your top gears, okay? And the reason that that's there is if you're hitting a hill and you don't want to drop a full gear. You're hauling heavy, you're hitting a hill, you can be up and you can drop 1 gear and hit a half a gear and be right there where you need to be rather than shifting a whole gear. I'd be down here if I was in if I was in road gear, I'd be up here like this. And if I hit a hill, she's pulling hard, I can do this. Bump the throttle and I'm down a half a gear. Instead of if it was a 9 speed, you've got to shift up. Truck's not running, so it's not going to shift for me, and that's kind of the deal. But the 15, that's a 13. Don't let me get lost here. An 18, you can do it in the low range too. So they've done something pretty cool with the 18 speed. They took the good things about the 15 speed and the old twin sticks and all that, being able to split or have a deep reduction, you've got that here. You've got the splits on the bottom. And then the 13 speed, you know, you can split when you're going down the highway and you hit a hill. So the 18 speed, that's why it's the heavy haul spec transmission. That's why it's so common. That's why, I mean, not common, but that's why it's everybody likes 18 speed, because it gives you everything you need and that. So 15 speed, I think we've talked on that a little bit. The video's getting a little bit long. 15 speed is a 10 speed with deep reduction. Now let's go to our last transmission. We've got the standard 10. We're done with that. Let's go with the goofiest, most loved, most hated transmission. I love it. Some people hate it. That is the Super 10. The Super 10, you won't have this. That will not be there. Why? Because you don't have a range shifter. There is no range selector on a Super 10. The only thing that you have is this button. That's it. And the reason it is because unlike, look at the pattern difference. You see how that's got the slash in it, and this has got the different ranges, the white on top and the black on the bottom. That kind of tells you how you shift this. So here's the main difference between a 10 and a Super 10. If it's a 10 speed, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, start over again. Hit that and start over again. You know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You shift all through them and then you start over. A Super 10 is the opposite of that. You come over here. Like I said, this isn't here. Don't even worry about this. 1, 2. And then when you go up, you shift, pull that back, shift to that gear. 3, 4. And then I want to go to 5, so I pull that out, go down to 5, 6. Pull that back to low, go 7, 8. And then I'm going to go down, I want 9 and 10, so I shift it, pull that back, and then shift down to 9 and 10. Some people, when they're used to a transmission with ranges, they get lost in the Super 10. The first truck I drove over the road was a Super 10, and I took to it like a duck to water. And what I loved about it is I'm going down the highway. It's just like the splitter on that 18 or 13, where I said if I hit a heavy hill, I could be up here and hit a heavy hill and, you know, just hit that and bump the gas, and I was down a half a gear. This is the same terms. It works the same way, but instead of splitting a half a gear, I'm a whole gear. So instead of going from, well, let's just say that this was a 10 speed with a splitter, just to make numbers work better for us. Instead of going from 10 to 9.5, and then up to 9, you know, that's the way kind of 18 speed works. You'd be an 18, 17, but it would be basically the way 18 speed is. It'd be, you know, 9, 8.5. Instead of doing that, I'm getting lost in the video here, I know, but instead of doing that, you split every gear. Just like an old Bob truck with a 2-speeder in. You know, low is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what's great about this transmission, like I said, is that if you're going down the highway, that's what we hauled as dry van freight. Hit a hill, I can go to 9th gear like that. Get over the hill, back to 10th. I'm not sitting here having to actually hit gears. So, for the final part of the video, how to identify what transmission you've got. I'm keeping you guys here forever. We've went through all this. For what we're talking about today, we have the 9-speed and all the transmissions built off that platform. And then we got the 10-speed and the transmissions built off that platform. The Super 10, the 10, and the 15. How to know what you've got. If you're in an Eaton Fuller transmission and you don't have this, that's all you're looking at, it's going to be a 10-speed or a Super 10. That's an easy way to tell if it's a Super 10, because a Super 10 does not have range selector. So this transmission is now a Super 10. This transmission is a 9-speed. If I don't have that part, it's a 9, because 9-speeds do not have splitters. If I have both of these, okay, we've got 3 options for what we're going to talk about today. It gets a little trickier. What color is this? If this is red, it's going to be a 13-speed. That's just the color they picked to use to identify. Red is a 13. You can split the top gears. If this is gray, it's going to be 18. That means you can split all the gears. Split the top and the bottom. And if it's blue, guess what? It's a 15. So that means this is a deep reduction. And although that has had a lot of sun bleaching, it was red at one time. So what do you think this L9000 Ford has with a Big Cam 350? What we got up here? Does it say it? Well, it doesn't come out and say it. But she's a 13-speed. Love this transmission. Only thing be better be an 18-speed. If you're still at this point in the video and you're still following along, you're awesome. I know it's drawn out, but it's a lot of information, and my new way of videos, I'm not editing, I'm just putting them out there so I can get more videos to you guys instead of spacing out on you like I have for the last couple of years. So this is going straight up. If I've mistalked, you're getting it straight from the horse's mouth. So if you're still here, I appreciate you. If you liked what I did, or you learned anything or whatever, leave a comment. Maybe even hit one of them 2 buttons. Maybe both those buttons that everybody likes to tell you to hit all the time. I'd sure appreciate it. And we'll come up and we'll be back with more. Please comment. Tell me what you think. I love reading the comments. A lot of people like to talk about what their experience is. I like a 13, an 18, and a Super 10. 9 speeds are fine. 10 speeds are fine. The 10 speed, that U motion is kind of weird to me. Where a 9 speed, you have that H pattern motion, but that 10 speed is kind of a weird, a straight 10 is kind of a weird motion pulling back to 6, but it doesn't matter. I've drove pretty much every one of them that I've told you about besides a 15. But anyway, need something? Comments, concerns? Let me know. I sure appreciate you.